The dust has now settled for the NBA trade deadline, and some are still feeling a little bit underwhelmed with the damage that Daryl Morey did do. While Buddy Hield has shined in the early returns for what he's done, it has now been revealed one bigger target that Daryl Morey may have just missed out on. We got a report today from Ramona Shelburne saying that the Sixers and Golden State Warriors are among the potential suitors looking to convince LeBron James to leave Los Angeles this offseason, per Woj and Ramona Shelburne. Quote, LeBron James remains focused on returning to the Lakers in the offseason, sources told ESPN, but undoubtedly there will be many of these same suitors, including Golden State and Philadelphia, looking to convince James otherwise. Now, that specific report is indicating this offseason of Daryl Morey's plan, and I am going to circle back and talk through the likelihood of all these chances here. But this report talks about Daryl Morey getting active at the trade deadline looking for LeBron James. Quote, after seeing James's murky social media post of an hourglass a week before the trade deadline, Philadelphia 76ers president of basketball operations Daryl Morey called Pelinka to probe on a James trade and was immediately told that James wasn't available. In fact, Pelinka responded by asking Morey if Joel Embiid was available, sources said, and that was the end of their brief conversation. So no surprise that there was not a lot of traction in these LeBron James trade talks here, but I do love that Daryl Morey is at least taking that chance. That shooters shoot, and you got to give him the opportunity, and Daryl Morey is a big game hunter. That you have to think when we're approaching how to make this team better. Daryl Morey truly seemed to have the mindset of leaving all options on the available, and whenever you have an opportunity to add a player the caliber and the talent of LeBron James, it is worth at least making the phone call. I do like that Pelinka responded with the Embiid response there. This is a little bit like the goofy kid in your fantasy football league that, he tries to trade his worst player for your best player on a week-by-week basis. I do think Daryl Morey is a little bit like that to deal with from an NBA general manager perspective. But hey, he's in the Sixers driving seat, and that's why we appreciate him for him, because every once in a while, it does work. And just as a reminder, Daryl Morey trying to trade for LeBron and Durant makes a lot more sense when you remember that 12 years ago, he called the Oklahoma City Thunder and got their third best player from an NBA Finals run for just Kevin Martin, Jeremy Lamb, and 2 first-round picks. That obviously being the first James Harden trade. You can really make the argument that Daryl Morey has been on the winning side of 3 separate James Harden trades, with that one by far being the most obvious, that being before James Harden evolved into the scoring champion he was, headlining that Houston Rockets team. And obviously trade values have come a far way since that time. Frankly, the just star power that some of these superstars in the NBA hold and the importance of having that type of superstar has grown in a massive way since it was that point, and there was not quite the confidence that James Harden was capable of being that guy at that time. A different story when we're talking about LeBron James, who everyone knows exactly what he is. Now, I do want to talk a little bit about the likelihood. We've heard for a couple months now of this mystery Eastern Conference team that has LeBron James on the radar, and I'm not really surprised to find out that that seems to be the Philadelphia 76ers. That we know that's who Daryl Morey is at his core, is he is a guy that wants to make a splash for the big star, and they don't get much brighter than LeBron James. That LeBron, even at this point in his career, is shining in a major way. In the 49 games that he's played this year, still averaging 24.8 points per game, 7.8 rebounds, or 7.8 assists, 7.2 rebounds, still shooting the ball very well, 39.5% from beyond the three-point arc, 52% from the floor overall, and this is in year 20 for LeBron out there in LA. So we know what he can still bring to the table, that even him not being the clear-cut best player in the NBA anymore as he was for a point in time, he's still a guy right up there in the mix, headlining an all-star game, and likely can influence a team to make it all the way to the NBA Finals if with the right pieces around him. So let's take a little step back here and talk about the Sixers' likelihood. That we know there's been so much attention paid to this cap space plan, and I've personally voiced my frustrations and why I have not been in favor of it. But these are the types of opportunities why you do clear this potential flexibility. That when you look at the Sixers roster heading into the offseason, that there is still Joel Embiid, still under contract for a couple more seasons, I believe up until 2028. There is this blank check set aside for Tyrese Maxey. Whatever you command on the open market or whatever your number is, these Sixers are going to match that. They did play a little bit around with the CBA managing to open up a little more money by delaying this extension from last offseason to this offseason. So Tyrese will be rewarded for it, and frankly will be paid more money because of it, because he is an all-star this year, has a chance at an all-NBA team, and with all those numbers, the price goes up based on what a team can offer. So we do have Tyrese Maxey. There is the little side note of likely Paul Reed being back, because there is a little clause in it that they have to make it past the first round for this contract to become guaranteed. But that is looking likely, I would say, at this point in time, that the Sixers at least make it past round one, as we've seen most years during the Joel Embiid era. It's round two that has been the issue. But beyond that, there's no other players committed money on this roster. That even a guy like Buddy Hield, an expiring contract, Anthony Melton, Tobias Harris, the list goes on and on. Every other player on the Sixers roster is an expiring deal. One of the few guys, and frankly, I think this was a driving force why the deal went down, was Jaden Springer, is one of these guys that was set to be on the books for next year. Daryl Morey wants no risk, was having committed money to other players. He's ready to paint this roster the way that he exactly sees fit, in a way that he hasn't really had the opportunity to since coming to Philadelphia. That so much of his moves and his process and the decisions that he has made have been efforts to just unwork and make better past mistakes that previous regimes have made. Talking about the Tobias Harris contracts, the Al Horford contracts, the Ben Simmons commitment. All these issues were problems inflicted by people before Daryl Morey got into the driver's seat of this organization. He has had to deal with those. He has mostly done a very good job dealing with those, and now he has a chance to really make it his own. So that's what Daryl Morey has his eyes on. And when you start to think about what is the best version of the Sixers team, what are the complementary pieces, you can't argue that LeBron James can have a fit just about anywhere. That he is a guy who does have a relationship with Tyrese Maxey, that they both have trained together with Chris Johnson Hoops as a trainer out there. Some really cool videos have come out from that. We also know the Clutch Sports connection, and it is a little bit funny that we flash back to the Ben Simmons era of Sixers basketball and is hoping on a prayer that LeBron James could be answered. Well, we got a fresh new guard, a fresh new all-star guard with Clutch Agency, with a shoe deal, and with a Chris Johnson Hoops as his trainer. And LeBron James, you might want to hitch your coattails to this guy a little more than the last guy, or he will drive you a little further than the last guy did at the minimum. So think about that little trio there, that if you have Tyrese Maxey, if you have LeBron James, and you have Joel Embiid, it's as good as it gets from a balance standpoint. That LeBron would be by far the best wing that the Sixers have had, a missing style of player as far as a guy that can match up with the Jason Tatums of the world, the Giannis Antetokounmpos of the world, and I get it. I'm very much being optimistic here. I don't think the likelihood is incredibly high, but I do want to bring in the Bronny James factor here. That LeBron has made it crystal clear that he does want to play with his son. I don't know what the outlook is for Bronny James from a draft perspective. There's a lot of factors that go into this beyond your typical prospect. And I'll say this, from what I've seen from Bronny James, I like him quite a bit as a player. I don't think he's a guy that should be one and done. And from the mock drafts that I've looked into, he seems like a very fringe candidate, and frankly, a guy that is more likely than not doesn't crack the top 60 for prospects this year. I'm not saying I don't think he's an NBA talent. Ultimately, I think he will be, but I do think he's a guy that would benefit from spending another season at USC or another season in college to get more polished and be ready when you do make that professional leap. Who knows if his timeline is feeling sped up. We know that LeBron has spoken openly about wanting to play with Bronny. I don't think, or at least I have not seen quite the same message from Bronny saying, I want to play with my dad. I do think there's a real world, and maybe he doesn't want that. He wants to create his own identity. I saw that Austin Rivers was taking some heat for making some statements along those lines, saying that he hopes Bronny doesn't end up on the same team as LeBron so he can kind of pave his own path, make his own legacy. And I do get that side of things. I think more than people want to acknowledge that you're never going to live up to the shadow of playing next to your dad, who's one of the top two basketball players to ever play the sport. And when your name is LeBron James Jr., kind of some tough cards that are dealt, that Bronny James could be a 10-time All-Star and he still would look a shell of what his dad has done at the NBA level. And that is a tough stage to live up to. So I don't want to make this path as clear as some are connecting it, that the team that drafts Bronny James is going to sign LeBron. I don't think it's quite as linear as that, but it is a factor to consider. That the Sixers, maybe they want to shoot up draft boards and take a shot on Bronny James with the hopes or the knowledge that LeBron James will soon follow. You can see the argument there. And to speak specifically on the contract for LeBron, currently making $47.6 million this year, he has a player option for $51.4 million next year, but obviously that means he can decline it and become a free agent if he sees fit. If he's looking at a potential landing spot, maybe one here in Philadelphia that seems more appealing than what's going on in Los Angeles right now, you can very much see a world where LeBron leaves another franchise and plants his flag in another organization and has an opportunity to compete for another title. I do think at this current time, with the core that they have, the Sixers are better equipped to compete for a championship than I see from the Lakers. I don't think it's a hot take by any means to see that LeBron should be more confident signing up for Joel Embiid to be the driving force than Anthony Davis has ultimately proved capable of. That I think very much the knowledge or the game plan for LeBron going to LA was to pass the baton to Anthony Davis as the driving force, the number one option for that team. I think AD, while he's been mostly very good overall, he hasn't quite offensively been that capable of a guy. That he's been a guy that among the best defenders in the NBA, no doubt about it. And he's had stretches where it looks phenomenal on both ends of the floor. But on a night-to-night basis, he just has not been a guy able to carry the weight and be that number one option in a way that I think the system was set up for him. And then you look deeper, guys like Austin Reeves, Rui Hachimura, these guys that I like, D'Angelo Russell, but aren't quite that caliber of player that you can feel confident in on a championship roster. So we will see what ultimately happens, but I do think that there's more of a chance LeBron James leaves Los Angeles than people are giving credit. And I think Philadelphia is positioning themselves as well as any team in the NBA, that they have the second most cap space. They have a reigning MVP candidate in Joel Embiid, a rising star in Tyrese Maxey. And I do think that Daryl Morey, more so than most GMs, would be open to making the sacrifices that come to bringing LeBron James on a team. That being allowing some roster control or him having some input in some decisions in the way that most players don't. I do think there's a world where this happens, not calling it a likely situation at this time, but this is a storyline that I think we should at least pay attention to through the remainder and heading into the offseason and whatever we have until that point. For now, the Sixers' focus remains on the court, that they've got one more game against the Miami Heat tonight before they head into the All-Star break. We will not see Kyle Lowry in his debut tonight. That is going to wait until after the break as well, but still ton to watch from the Buddy Hield perspective, campaign perspective, and hopefully more guys getting healthy as we finally have a little break in the season. Thank you guys for tuning in this video. Let me know your thoughts on the comments, how fired up or how hopeful you should be or are for LeBron James potentially considering the Sixers. Make sure you're smashing that subscribe button, dropping a like on these videos, and I'll be talking with you next time right here on Sixers Digest. Peace.